Fantastic. So as many of you know, as George was saying, we have some familiar faces here, which is absolutely fantastic to see some of you again after so long. And also, if there's anyone here who isn't aware of AWA or is joining us for the first time, then you'll know that our mission, our overall headlining mission, is to make working life better. It's something that has guided us always to leave a place where we work or leave people in a better state than the way we found it. And so making working life better is really what we're all about. How do we make the organizations that we spend most of our useful life in, our adult life in, how do we make these places better places to be and more effective in what they do? So this is kind of our mission, and what this falls under this umbrella. If you do want to follow us, then probably the best thing to do is go to the website and sign up to our newsletter. There's a monthly newsletter we send out with all about our courses, about latest news that's going on, articles that people have written. It's pretty much the cutting edge of what's happening through the AWA lens. And also on LinkedIn is actually probably our better place to find us, rather than on Twitter, which kind of we use a bit, but not that much. Okay, so moving on, the enterprise cohort is what we're sort of talking about, and where this learning sort of fits in. And this cohort is an IC Agile certified 9-month program, where the aim of this program is that you do your normal work in your organizations. That's the work, but of course you're supported by, and you learn new things with a cohort of people across the industry to help you be the most effective that you can be in making your organizations better places to work. From an IC Agile perspective, there are 2 knowledge acquisition classes that some of you will have been on, and if you haven't heard of them or you haven't been on them yet, the best place to do this is in this sort of week-long boot camp of doing these 2 certificates, the ICP-ENT and ICP-CAT, which is the IC Agile Enterprise Agile Coaching track. Once those classes have been completed, and you've done the assessment at the end of those to show that you have that knowledge of how to do that deep transformation work, then you're eligible to go on the program, the cohort program, the ICEC, which is really IC Agile's most highest certification. And AWA had quite a hand in writing the competency framework, which took 2 years for IC Agile. And then, of course, we went on and spent another 1.5 years writing the program for that. And now we've run 4 of those programs so far. So this is the cohort program. I'm going to take this down now. And one thing else to mention, actually, just before I do that, is at the top there, you'll see that EAC webinar. If you do want to come on this, there's a 10% discount, which is a good some money off there if you do want to join. So write that down, EAC webinar, and then of course you can join if you want to with that.
Cool. And then as a little segue to the content portion of our time together today, over the last 5-6 years, how long have we been running the enterprise courses already now? I keep forgetting. It's like 2017 when we started, 2016? Somewhere around there.
Actually, not sure either. Probably, yeah, something like that. 16, yeah.
Yeah. So we've taught hundreds of enterprise change agents by now. And as Simon mentioned, we've run 4 of these cohort programs now. And over all of these courses, this is where we've identified that what we're covering today is the one thing that has been overlooked the most, but has a huge impact on the success of any type of transition efforts or transformation efforts that are happening. So that's why we're quite excited to be able to share that with all of you today.
Yeah, brilliant. Awesome. Okay, good. So if you have any questions about the cohort program, then do let us know. You can either email me, simon@adventureswithagile.com, or just put the questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end and we can share them with everybody then. Good. Okay, right. So let's talk about this mysterious kind of thing that we've been building up to, and so that we can get into the detail of it.
Yeah, so we need to set the problem space for this one a little bit. So we would like to invite you to spend a moment thinking about, in your practice of organizational change, what some concrete challenges are that you are facing in your work. And if you're comfortable sharing them, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll pick up hopefully some patterns based on everything that's being contributed. And then we're going to link in this one thing that we have seen as the common denominator that will probably alleviate a good number of those. Okay, so what are some concrete challenges that you are currently working through in your enterprise change agency work, whether that be across inside a department, across multiple departments, doesn't matter.
Yeah, or even multiple teams.
Multiple teams even, yeah, that's large enough.
So feel free to share. It doesn't need to be a book, just very, one or two lines in the chat. What are the current challenges that you see either in your workplace or indeed in the world of organizational change? Thank you, Nikki. That's fantastic. That's exactly the kind of thing we're thinking about. These kind of challenges which we all face. Thank you, Darren. Awesome, starting to come through now. Brilliant. So do have a read of these, because you'll probably see other people's challenges being similar to your own.
And that's actually a feature missing from Zoom, for people to just be able to click a button and +1 a comment from earlier. That'd be nice.
It would, wouldn't it?
Amazing. Not enough access. Yeah, lack of awareness. Not enough sponsorship. Yeah, management outsourcing or insourcing, but outside of the management team. Not enough urgency. If you're currently not talking, please put your line on mute. Thank you. Senior manager. Yeah, it's a fair amount of lacking management support, lacking vision of how pieces of work work together. Stuck in the old pattern of waiting for a central decision. Yeah, too much change at the same time with too many dependencies. Okay.
Good.
Yes, very nice. Yeah. Yeah. So, Simon, what patterns have you picked up looking through all of this?
Yeah, so there's many things around management and leadership, looking at that sort of focus of there being either too much control, not enough either buy-in or support, or the willingness to want to change from that perspective. The management change themselves, or leadership want to change themselves. It's other people. Those kind of things I'm seeing both within this text here, but also in the organizations and through the trainings that we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one thing. A lot of it comes down to mindset as well. This idea of fixed scope, fixed time, still very prevalent. There was a couple of threads I actually deleted in the end because some of the comments there were becoming less than helpful. Unfortunately, as we know, social media can unfortunately go that way. But there was a couple of threads over the weekend that I started around people over process and the idea of empowerment, and the amount of backlash that got in terms of actually what we need is better project management. We need people to get on and do what they said they were going to do. We need people to plan better, these kind of thinking that the world is still predictable and constant is unfortunately still very much there, and that people just need to get on and do their job or else kind of mentality. So that came out of some of the things at the weekend, and I'm seeing, although it doesn't actually say that here, I'm seeing threads of that need for predictability throughout some of these comments.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, as we promised, what we're about to share is indeed most likely going to help with all of these things. And since we're believers of or appreciate we're appreciating complexity, it's worthwhile experimenting with that thing we're about to share for alleviating all of those things. So, do you want to do the big reveal, Simon?
Yeah, so I mean, it's something which I think is going to when we first sort of reveal it, it's going to be like, oh, it's that, okay, but let's get into the detail of it, and then probably we're going to see how this can be so effective. And this really, in a word, is about internal marketing. Really, it's about showing and demonstrating through transparency what is actually happening. So not the most amazing headline in some ways, but however, when we start digging into this and actually seeing techniques of how we can do this and some of the effects that this has, then we can start to see how this actually creates a pull rather than this constant push. And what we're saying is we want managers to change the way they are. We want people to have a different mindset. Well, that's a push. And we know that when we push, we get resistance. So what we're looking to do is create a pull. Hang on a minute. What's going on over there? I want some of that. They seem to be effective. So how do we create that? How do we create this in somehow there are often organizations where transparency can be challenging. That perhaps there isn't the communication methods for that in place at the moment. People still think that we're going to be doing pilots and then rolling out agile across the organization. So what effect does this have on that? So there's quite a few number of topics that we're going to talk through in terms of what we actually mean by this sort of internal marketing capability.
And if for some reason or another the term marketing doesn't sit well with you, or promotion of the work that you're doing sit well with you, just pick a different set of terminology for it, right? Sharing the experience, sharing the learning, providing insights, and giving access, whatever you want. These are all in the end just words and labels. But what we're proposing is that by collecting the progress and the successes as well as the learnings, and sharing that with the wider organization or with key stakeholders, depending on how you want to direct that, that is how we can create more interest about the work that is happening, and therefore create the scenario of the pull that Simon mentioned. So we can actually gain more momentum by pulling people in rather than attempting to push the change out further.
Yeah, because it's interesting that when many agile sort of ways of working start with motivation. How do we get people motivated to change? And I actually think that this is a part of it, for sure. But the bigger part is, how do we build the capability? How do we create a capability where there are enough people who know how to make the change? Because often it's a few people battling against an entire organization that are doing something they know that they want to change, but they just don't know how. And there's a few voices, often with the push mentality, trying to get other people to work. So what we're trying to build here, it's not so much the marketing in itself for marketing's sake, because of course marketing always has some other reason for existing. It's really about alerting and telling people about something. So what we're actually meaning here is about building capability through sharing what is going on. How do we build that capability across the organization?
Exactly.
Ooh, good.
Yes, and so at this point in time, we wanted to involve you again a little bit, and if it's already popped up in your mind, or if you'd like to take a moment to think about it, when we share this invitation to you to talk more about the work that you do in the organization, what's coming up for you? And feel free to share things that parts of your brain are offering that you don't really feel are true representation of yourself. So for example, you might think, yeah, but I'm so busy with this work already, I don't have time for it. And so everything that you share is cool with us. We'd be surprised if we hadn't heard anything like that before. But just share your reactions, what's coming up for you when you just listen to us. Encourage and invite you to talk about the work that you do in the organization more. Very good. Yep. Because whatever you share here, we'll pick up and work with for a little bit going next.
So think about the work that you're actually doing in terms of helping an organization shift. How would you share that to the organization? Brilliant things here. When we're doing the cohort, of course, we'd be talking through these points, but there's a bit too many of us on here to do the same thing. So instead of chat on a cohort, instead of the chat through Zoom, of course, we'd be talking and using Mural and whiteboarding things.
Yeah.
So just ask the question again, just to be totally clear. Could you just repeat the question?
Yeah. What reactions do you find come up for you in your mind, in your heart, when you just listen to us, inviting you to share more about the work across the organization that you do in the organization?
Thanks, George.
Sure thing. Very nice. We already have some people who are actually trying that, which is good.
So some of the things so far is not having enough time, attempting to fly. I like that one before crawling, walking or running. Do we have that sort of what we're sharing? Is it actually going to be valuable to others? Making sure that it is validated to be useful. That's what I'm reading from that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people saying that we do actually need this. This would be a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. I really appreciate the openness. Some of these things are wonderful tokens of vulnerability also. Thank you.
Yeah, so having nothing back also, like sharing things and then just getting tumbleweed. It can be very off-putting.
Yeah. Very nice. Okay.
Good.
So maybe we'll let's keep a check on time. We're doing all right, Simon? Loads of time.
Loads of time. Always loads of time. Cool,
Yeah.
brilliant. So there's some concerns, there are some excitement, some people saying they are doing this, some people saying they would love to do this more. So we can talk about some of the stories and things which we have seen, some of the things that we have seen where it's effective, and also some of the methods and usefulness in the ways that we have done this to hope give you some useful tools and useful way forwards with this. So we've talked a bit about the purpose, first of all. So let's just wrap that up into something that's containable in terms of why are we doing this? Why do we want to share what we are doing? Let's just wrap that up so that we've got something for that. And then we can talk about some of the things about how we would do that. So capability is the first one. How do we grow capability across the organization? Usually there aren't too many of us who actually really understand what it takes to move an organization from that mindset of predictability, process over people, and that sort of need to get things right first time. There's a lot of that going on. How do we move from that to an organization which is adaptable, that can experiment and learn and puts people first and empowers people to make the decisions that they need to make? How do we build that capability? So the few of us that there are, if we are managing to build that into a small part or a bubble in the organization, then we want to be able to share the tools and techniques. So that's the first sort of reason for this, sharing that capability. Another is this motivation. So some of these were mentioned in the comments about when we start talking about things, when people seeing the initiative going on, then motivation grows. People feel like they're part of a movement. One of the biggest things that we lack, as human beings, especially now more than ever, is connection to others. And our work can sometimes be quite isolating. So building this momentum up, letting people know, hopefully you do get some feedback from that. You can build that connection with others and people feel like they're belonging to something which is making improvements. People generally want to change, they just don't know how. So another is permission. So there was I was working with one organization where we were in a particular team where our senior manager for that part of the organization had been paying very much lip service to the new ways of working. And his organization was struggling, but he could not get his head around letting go of control. And the very senior management, which was about 2 bosses up from him, had been encouraging this way of sharing across the organization. And so some of the other departments had shared their successes. And so the department that I was working with, eventually it came down to it. And the manager of this department said, well, I just don't think it can be done. I don't believe it. I'm quite happy with the way we're working. Even though we've got all these problems, it's not going to work what you're saying. And the senior manager then said, well, actually, I would like to make all of this information available to you from other parts of this organization that have made it work, where they are getting successes. And so the mandate came that actually, not only do you have permission, but that it is possible and that you actually need to get on and do it, which was a kind of, which was great because it opened up the possibilities. And then that person sort of felt that they had that, they were safe to try. That manager felt he was safe then to try some other things because other people had gone before him. So that permission is also really important. So another one is that we come up against all the time is, how do you measure the value of a coach? How do you measure the value of an enterprise or any coach? And of course, this is a very difficult question to answer because we want the credibility for the successes that we've had to fall firmly within the coachees, within the departments that we're helping. So we don't want to take credit because it takes away from the amazing work that we are supporting. So by sharing that amazing work as coaches, as enterprise change agents, even though we're not saying that work is ours, we are sharing that work. Our name is associated with that work, and it significantly helps answer that question. What value are you actually offering? Or have you read the newsletter lately? Look at all the amazing work that's going on. So it's another big plus in the how do you value what you're doing. So another one would be data. Some of you may be data driven. I need to see the data. Some of you may not. I'm not particularly a data driven person. I think that if it feels right and I can kind of see it, I can intuitively get what needs to happen, good enough for me, let's give it a go. Unfortunately, the rest of the world isn't so open, especially when it comes to senior managers in large companies quite often. So data and things happening before goes a long way to helping people feel they can take that first step. So any data that we can share ticks that box. Not only where has it been done before, but it's actually been done here in the organization. A huge permission, a huge sort of relaxer, if you like, of those less willing people to try things on a limb or go out there first of all. So normalization, it's actually normal for people to be trying different things. It's normal for people to be using stickies, and we don't, I remember once, I think probably with the pandemic things have changed a bit, but there was one organization we worked in where we weren't allowed to put stickies on the wall anywhere whatsoever. And this obviously really hindered people in whiteboarding and creating these sort of information radiators, as it were. And when we finally got down to it, what we found is that the CEO, when he used to walk through the office with his clients, he felt it made the place look a right mess with bits of paper stuck all over the place, and it wasn't the right impression. And so what we did, we had a talk, and he gave this sort of permission that it would be okay as long as all the stickers were the same color as the company logo, and we had these whiteboards with the company logo at the top, so that it all looked okay, so that when he walked through with his clients, it really worked. And what that said, that message that went out, was that it's okay. He's normalized this, and as the sort of normalization of this sort of way of working spread, more people then felt that they could start working in this way because it was okay. The CEO had said it was okay, and now it was up in the office and it became normal. So it's a kind of that's like a physical sort of example of where, when people start seeing things around them, that becomes normal, and then people start behaving in that way. So by sharing things in the same way, maybe it's not so physical now, but the more we share, the more we normalize the practices and approaches that that go to enable this new way of working.
Yeah. Now to move us onto the next bit, some of the things that you've shared, partially which are challenges in doing more of this communication piece, and others are confirmation of what is already happening. It's worthwhile to try a communication method that is suitable to your context, of course, right? But there is all sorts. You might have already heard from the stories that Simon shared, what you could do, and anything from an opt-in newsletter that you get promoted in an internal general newsletter, all the way over to a big town hall. We've seen everything in between, and it needs to be right for you. But the one thing, of course, that is worth bearing in mind is that will scale differently. And regardless of what you choose, it might take some time for you to actually get some return on that investment. So in the short term, it might seem a big overhead for the on top of the work that you're already doing, to also worry about more communication. If that is something that's real for you, it might be worth doing a little bit of a cost-benefit analysis, right? If you think about the first question that we asked, what are some challenges that you currently have in the work that you do in the organization, and how much of a cost that is to actually making progress, versus the investment of doing a bit more communication around it, and how you can, over the mid and long term, alleviate some of those challenges by reallocating some of your time towards more communication. And what we found is that that is a worthwhile shift of allocation, doing a little bit more communication, so that we can, over the medium and long term, alleviate some of those challenges that we're facing. One of the things, to be a bit more specific or concrete, that several of you mentioned, was related to middle management engagement, or senior management support for some of the work that you're doing. Right? And this is where it's quite useful to be very mindful about how you're directing the communication and who you're involving in that communication. Right? So the middle is often, quote unquote, frozen, because they don't necessarily know what the role might be in this new world that we're creating together. Right? Which is a perfectly valid reaction from middle managers, right? So this is where you can tap a bit more into the coaching aspect, and perhaps even organize things like roundtables for middle managers, right? Because actually they can become change agents themselves, right? Their role can change, but they can take part in that change rather than just withdrawing and not engaging, just as an example. When you're thinking about the communication vis-a-vis senior and top executive sponsors, this is where it's useful to actually work through your line, wherever you're reporting. If you're reporting to somebody specific, work with your sponsor, and work out how they can influence those other senior stakeholders if you don't get to work with them directly, right? So we're not only talking above the line internal marketing, if you will, but we're also talking direct marketing. Right, and actually work out where the challenges are coming from, and work out how you can shift and tweak your communication so that it can alleviate those. So those are some additional tips. Simon, is there anything you'd like to add to those based on what people shared?
Yeah, so I think that you've got some great examples there. I mean, we once we once did this sort of this incredibly good meeting, which we thought went really well, and we actually put into the newsletter how well this meeting had gone. It was only a meeting it was basically a retrospective, but with a lot of people. We had about 80 people there, and we did it all in an hour. And so we wanted to do this once a month. So we wrote about this in the newsletter. The newsletter went out to the whole company. The company was about 12,000 people. And so we ran the next retrospective with 80 people in it. And we had I think about must have been about another 150 people turn up to watch. So we'd gone from 80 people doing a private retrospective to 150 people turning up who were like, I want to do this in my part of the organization. We want to know how it happens. So we had 150 people literally round the edges watching this retrospective. So that was an interesting development, but that idea then spread out through the organization with those people going away and trying it. And after that, we had so many requests. Well, would you mind coming and showing us how to facilitate 80 people, because we want to do that. And so then we tried to build up that facilitation. So that was a really big pull request.
Yeah.
I
also like to throw in a bit of a micro case study. In some government work, we were looking at how to bring together the digital and technology organization. So digital was all about product development, human-centered design and all, and IT was all about infrastructure, hardware, and user IT. With rather different cultures. And as part of this merger, I got to work with the exec level, and they wanted to work out how they can change the culture so that it's more integrated and that people get to know each other and so on and so forth. So what we started with was just a newsletter that went to everybody that solicited stories from collaboration across the two. And after a few months, there was enough traction and response to that newsletter that we then invited everybody. Those were 400 or 500 people or so in those two departments to a workshop, because we just wanted to see whether we get enough people to make this worthwhile. And we expected maybe 40 people or so, and we actually had 120 people who responded that they want to join, and in the end 80 people made it. Right. So in the very beginning on the newsletter, we didn't really get much traction, but we stayed with it and we kept sharing stories of collaboration and things like that. And it built up from there. Right. So patience is key, and but it definitely works.
So different things in different contexts. So the things that I've got a little list here I can just read out ever so quickly, just for things if you're making notes about things. So newsletter we've both talked about, but there's often things that you can even create your own. The heads of, it's always good, as George mentioned, about who is actually giving this message. So if I give a message as an external consultant or coach, then that message has a certain weight because it's an external person, but it also doesn't have a weight because it's not the senior managers. So it depends on the culture. So who's the best person to give things out? So that carries often more weight than the message itself. All hands meetings, when people get together now online, little tiny piece of that presenting, you can get people to present the amazing work that they've done for those types of meetings. Another company that we worked with was really, really good because they had the heads of the departments create short videos for about 10-15 minutes, and they put them on the internet where anyone could download what was happening in the change space across the organization. So you could go in and see all the different agile places, all the different departments with the actual heads of talking briefly about what they had done. And I think that was every quarter. They recorded a sort of 15-minute video. Learning and development. So in your learning and development program, how can you build in the learnings that you've got into future trainings? So often there's a training department in large organizations, or you'll have perhaps HR doing management training. How do you take what's already been done, real life examples, and build those into future training for managers? Other things we've done is, so CEO mentioning things, we already had that as heads of. Public case studies and presentations. So we've had various clients over the years publicly present things. New starters, when people first join. So it's sort of like the idea, the ways of working. How do we encourage this when new people join? So make it part of people's job roles that they're expected to be transparent and share the wins and losses. And then the last one is communities of practice. Make it a part of the role of communities of practice, especially around change, for them to spend some time every month or 2 months or every quarter writing up some of the things that they have done, that you have done. So they're the kind of things that I had in mind.
Brilliant. So that's a wonderful laundry list. And now we were thinking to add to the flavor of how we're usually doing our cohort calls, we would open up some breakout rooms. It's opt-in if you don't fancy and you're having if you're peopled out for the day from other calls before, don't feel like you have to join in, but we'll open the rooms. And if you do want to chat, go ahead and exchange some ideas on just one thing that you might want to try when it comes to communicating more about the organizational change work that you're doing. We'll keep this rather short, just 5 minutes in the interest of time, and then we'll come back and we'll have a few closing remarks. If people have queries about the cohort program, we can do this after the original, because we wanted to keep this as close to 45 minutes as we can. Right, Simon?
And if you find yourself in a room where you've just got no one in there, come back and we'll continue there, or find another room for you. So don't feel like you have to sit there in that. Just 5 minutes then. So do you want me to set the rooms up?
I've done it already, and even though I made it okay for people to stay with us in the main room, we've now had quite a few people drop off when they heard breakout rooms. But anyway, so that just means those who want it are still here, which is fantastic. So we'll open the rooms now. Again, talk about just one thing that you could try when it comes to communication. Okay.
And then we'd like to hear back from you when you all come back.
Yeah.
So we'll see you all in 5 minutes, and yeah, look forward to hearing about the key thing that you have talked about in your session.
So we are curious to get some input from you all, something that you are looking to try. If you would like to share by speaking, feel free to do that. Just raise the hand so we know that you want to talk. Alternatively, put it in a chat, and this way we can get a bit of an insight what you are taking away as an intention for your own practice in Enterprise Change Agency. All right, so coming out of your 5-minute conversations, what's one thing that you'd like to try? If you want to talk us through it, use the raise hands feature. If you want to share it in the chat, also wonderful.
Yeah, I don't mind starting off.
Cool.
So I definitely like the tip to consciously kind of make time to work on communication. I think that's really good. Something I and my coach colleagues can definitely do more of, to let that mindset kind of bubble up and it grow.
Wonderful, thank you, Alex. And over to Walter. Wally.
Hey, when I jumped into the breakout room, I was in the middle of writing a note to my team about what they thought about a newsletter, because I was listening to Simon, and I thought that newsletter was an interesting way to start talking about small learnings or successes and things that may kind of advertise to others that don't have really time to listen to us, but may have time to read a newsletter. And then one of the participants, I can't remember their names, talked about storytelling, which I thought was fascinating, because if you not only talked about successes, but you talked about how you're working on something moving towards a success, may lead to hearing from other people about variations on experiments as you're building towards something that may lead to something that you didn't think about, which might also help to add that also to the newsletter. So that's what we were talking about.
Beautiful. Thank you much, Walter. Over to Christian. Oh, Christian, sorry.
Thank you. One of the things that we just sort of briefly discussed in a group, not necessarily something to start doing, but something just to really probably value a lot more, and that is that visibility piece. It plays a massive part, and I don't think people actually realize the level of extent that can really support and change mindsets. It just means having that bravery and that courage to maybe step up and be that first person to do something. And that's what I really want to encourage within the teams that I look after, is that safe space to be brave, step out of a comfort zone. And you never know how many people just naturally tend to follow that standout leader. So we'll definitely look at how we can implement a little bit more of that and maybe highlight it to everybody else within the teams.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christian. And over to John.
The newsletter and the persistence. We already have a newsletter, but it's jam-packed with progress, as well as the organizational change piece is right at the end. Readership is super low, but what my takeaway is perhaps make it more focused on the changes and successes, as opposed to an update for everybody, 200 people in the tribe. And but yeah, narrow it down to, and get that organizational change and successes right at the top of that newsletter, and try to encourage that instead. It's less to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, John. And over to Rian.
From a transparency perspective, I mean, as you guys did mention, share your success factors. But what I've picked up as well is the moment you start sharing the negative portion as well, your senior managers do suddenly get involved because it feels like a bit of that they feel guilty in a way. It feels that they should have been involved, etc. So it's a bit of a sneaky technique, but it actually works well.
Yeah, it's all about, again, framing and labeling, right? So what didn't work so well was in the future, we're hoping we can get some more support in order to avoid that, whatever it is, right? Beautiful. Great. Okay, thanks for those contributions. Simon.
Yes, so that's that last point, and also come up there's another couple of things there. We're probably reaching close to the end of our time together, but another key element of this is normalizing what success and failure actually means when we consider learning. So in terms of experimentation, failure is really to follow the process of learning. So if we do something, it doesn't work how we expected, and we learn nothing from it, I would consider probably that's a bit of a failure. However, if we do something in a safe way that doesn't turn out how we expected, but we learn loads from it so that we're now really equipped, that actually, if we followed the process of learning, that's a very safe way to do it, and that I'd consider that a success. So it might not have been exactly what we expected from the beginning, but we're closer to where we want to be. So those kind of things in part of the communication, if we can slowly shape that as an underlying message about what success and failure actually means in your organization, I think that creates a safer space to be able to then explore some of the things where the real value was learning rather than monetary value or a value to the customer or something like that.
Excellent. Beautiful. Now, we are almost out of time. Maybe now is a good time to conclude the content portion of today's call. And so if to all of you, we would like to thank you for joining, for getting engaged, and for sharing and connecting with us, and sharing what could be a lunch hour for some of you also. And Simon put the reminder of the discount code in there as well, in case you actually want to join us on the cohort. We have some spaces left, and we're getting started in September. And if anybody is here who has questions about the cohort program or our enterprise courses, we're going to hang back, Simon and I, for any of those questions. But if you are all good for today, you're closed, and you got something out of today, really appreciate your time with us. And we're going to close the official portion, but if you have questions, hang back. We'll be here, okay? So let's unmute our microphones and give each other a bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Continuing journeys.
Thank you. Bye.
See you all.